Everyone feared the prince's fiancée, until the new waitress threw her out of the restaurant. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The first time Elise Moreau carried a full tray across the main room, her hands did not tremble, but her heart did. "Careful, girl," murmured Pierre, the senior waiter, as he passed her at the doorway. "Tonight is not the evening to drop anything." "Is any evening the right one?" she whispered back. He almost smiled. "Tonight less than others. The nobility are hungry, and not only for food." The restaurant on the Rue Saint-Honoré was already full, though the sun had not yet finished setting. Gentlemen in powdered wigs leaned back in their chairs, speaking in low, important voices. Ladies fanned themselves and glanced around as if every table were a stage, and they alone the audience. Silver clinked, chairs scraped, and the soft murmur of Parisian talk rose and fell like the tide. Elise dodged a boy carrying bread baskets and reached a table near the window. 3 merchants sat there, dressed more neatly than richly. One of them smiled at her with grateful eyes as she set down their plates. "Thank you, mademoiselle," he said. "You move like you have been here for years." She shook her head. "This is my first week, monsieur." "Then may it be the first of many," he replied. "We need steady hands more than ever." She smiled at that because she needed to believe it. This job was all she had left. Her father was gone. Their rooms had been emptied by strangers with ledgers. There was only this small wage and the hope that no one important would decide she was in the way. "More bread for table 12, called the owner from behind the counter. "And mind your steps, Elise. We have discerning guests tonight." "Yes, monsieur," she answered. She crossed the room again, weaving through a path she had studied in her mind again and again. The restaurant felt almost safe now, a place of rules she could learn. Do not spill. Do not speak too much. Do not look the guests straight in the eye unless they invite it. The bells on the door chimed. The sound was small, but it sliced through the air. Conversations dimmed. The maitre d' straightened as if pulled by an invisible string. Pierre stiffened beside the sideboard. He whispered just one word. "Her." Elise turned. A woman entered as though the doorway were a frame made for her alone. Tall, slender, perfectly composed, Lady Vivienne Darcy did not need to raise her voice or lift her chin. The room adjusted itself to her presence. A servant stepped inside first to announce her, but his words came out shaky. "Lady Vivienne Darcy, fiancée to His Highness, Prince Alexandre de Valmont." Several men rose at once. Some bowed awkwardly from their chairs. A ripple of whispers ran between the tables. The prince's fiancée. She chose to dine here? God help the owner. The owner hurried forward, wiping his hands on his apron, though they were already clean. "Lady Vivienne," he said, bowing so low his voice nearly disappeared. "Our humble establishment is honored. Your usual table by the window?" She handed her cloak to the servant without looking at him. "I will decide which table is suitable when I see the room," she replied. Her voice was quiet and smooth but carried easily. "I dislike assuming contentment before examining the truth." Elise felt the words like a small chill. She watched as Vivienne's gaze moved around the room, measuring everyone and everything. It was not like the gaze of other noble women, who seemed to see only their own reflection in the nearest glass. Vivienne's eyes were sharp, focused, and faintly amused, as if all around her there was a performance staged solely for her boredom. In the back corner, at a modest table half shadowed by a column, a man in a dark coat sat alone. He had been there before the room began to fill, quiet, watching. His clothes were too fine for a tradesman, too simple for a titled lord. Elise had noticed him only because he looked at everybody, but never in a way that made anyone uncomfortable. When Vivienne entered, he straightened slightly, then settled deeper into his seat, expression unreadable. Vivienne's eyes passed over him and did not pause. Instead, she pointed with her fan. "There, clear that table." The table in question was occupied by a family, a man with tired shoulders, a woman carefully dressed, and a little girl with her hair tied up in a ribbon that had seen better days. Their plates had just arrived. The little girl's eyes were wide, delighted by the place, by the candlelight reflected in the polished silver. The owner hesitated. "They have already been served, my lady." "Perhaps." Vivienne's brow lifted the smallest fraction. "Do you wish to continue serving them?" she asked softly. "Or do you wish to continue serving me?" The words were spoken quietly, but they weighed more than any shout. "Of course, my lady," the owner answered, his face paling. "Pierre, assist this family to another table." Pierre swallowed. "But, monsieur, the only free places are near the kitchen door. It is noisy." The child— "Then perhaps they should have chosen a simpler establishment," Vivian said. Her eyes turned to the little girl, who stared back, confused. "Children should not be brought where they will only be in the way." The woman's cheeks flushed. The man reached for his daughter's hand, his jaw tightening, but he rose without protest. That was what one did when someone like Vivienne spoke. As Pierre apologized and led them away, Elise felt something knot in her chest. The girl kept looking back at the window table, as if the candle there were a lost promise. The woman's eyes were bright, but she did not let her tears fall. The man murmured a thank you to Pierre, as if it were a favor and not a humiliation. Vivian sat in their place, gliding into the chair as though it had been carved for her. She arranged her skirts and opened her fan with a faint snap. "I hope the food is more satisfying than the arrangements," she said. "It will be perfect, my lady," the owner promised. "We shall see to you ourselves." He signaled to Elise. She hurried forward, heart pounding now for reasons that had nothing to do with trays or steps. "Bring Lady Vivian our finest wine," he said softly. "Do not spill a drop, and do not speak unless she addresses you." "Yes, monsieur." Elise collected the bottle, its glass cool against her palms. She could feel the eyes of the entire staff on her as she approached Vivienne's table. It seemed the room itself leaned closer. As she reached the table, Vivienne's gaze flicked to her, taking in the plainly pinned hair, the simple dress, the careful posture. "A new face," Vivienne remarked. "The city replaces its servants as swiftly as its fashions." "Yes, my lady," Elise answered, keeping her eyes on the bottle. "I began last week." "Ah. Then let us hope you are not as inexperienced with wine as you are with the room." There was no kindness in the jest, but there was a sort of detached amusement, as if Vivian enjoyed testing how deep the fear ran. Elise unsealed the bottle with slow care and poured, watching the stream so intently that she might have been watching her own fate. The wine stopped just before the rim. The glass did not overflow. Her hand did not shake. Vivienne accepted it without comment, but the faintest spark of boredom flickered across her face, as if she had been disappointed that nothing went wrong. "Your name?" she asked, sipping. "Elise Moreau, my lady." "Moreau. Forgettable, but suitable." Vivienne set the glass down. "I trust you will be more attentive than your colleagues." "The table is still dusty." Elise glanced at the table. It gleamed. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Yes, my lady," she said. She returned to the counter, cheeks warm. Pierre caught her eye, offered a small, sympathetic tilt of his head, but said nothing. This was how things were. The noble who paid could say what she wished. Those who served could not. The evening grew louder. Platters of roasted meat and fragrant sauces left the kitchen in a steady stream. Outside, the sky deepened. Inside, the candlelight thickened. Elise moved through it all, serving, clearing, smiling when she could, disappearing when she must. At a small table not far from Vivian's, a solitary man entered, his coat worn but carefully brushed. His boots were polished, though the leather bore scars. He carried himself with the reserve of someone who knew both finer and rougher places. When the maitre d' saw him, he almost turned him away. "We are nearly full," the maitre d' said, "and our guests are—" "I need only a simple meal," the man replied. His voice was low, steady. "Bread, soup, a little wine, if it is not too dear. I will not linger." He placed a few coins on the table. They were honest coins, not many, but enough. The maitre d' looked at them, then at the growing crowd, then at the door, as if afraid the next person to cross it might demand an empty table. "Very well," he conceded. "You may sit there." The man took his seat with a grateful nod. As Elise brought him bread and a bowl of steaming soup, she saw him glance around with quiet appreciation, not envy. "Merci, mademoiselle," he said, lowering his head. "It is good to sit where one is treated as a person." She felt a small smile rise. "It is nothing grand," she said, "but the soup is warm." "Warm is more than many can say of their homes tonight," he answered. She left him with a fuller heart than she had approached Vivian with. It felt right, serving someone who did not expect the world to fall at his feet. But comfort in a place like this never lasted long. Vivian's voice cut through the hum. "Excuse me." It was not loud, but it carried. The entire staff stilled. Vivian's eyes were on the solitary man. "Is this," she asked, "a tavern or a respectable house? I see merchants, minor officials, and the occasional person of name, but that—" Her fan tipped in the man's direction. "That is hardly suitable company for me." The owner hurried to her side. "My lady, all our guests are respectable. This gentleman has paid—" "He has paid for food," Vivian replied. "He has not paid to sit within earshot of me. I did not come here to dine beside the dust of the streets." The man stiffened, but did not speak. His hand tightened around his spoon. Elise stood frozen near the serving station, the empty tray pressed to her side. "Move him," Vivian said, "or move me, and I shall be certain to mention the insult in every salon in Paris." The owner's face went slack with despair. "My lady, there is no other empty table apart from—" "The one by the kitchen," she finished for him. "Yes, I am aware. That seems appropriate." The man pushed back his chair. "I do not wish to cause trouble," he said quietly. "I can finish quickly and be gone. There is no need to—" "There is every need," Vivian interrupted. "I will not dine as if I were in a common inn. If this establishment cannot distinguish between its guests, I shall dine elsewhere." The owner turned to Elise. His eyes begged her to understand, to obey. "Elise," he said softly, "please escort this gentleman to the other table." The room watched. The merchants. The family pushed to the lesser corner. The man in the dark coat at the back. Even Pierre, who rarely allowed his face to betray more than mild fatigue, looked stricken. Elise began to walk. Her feet moved, but her thoughts rushed ahead of her. She saw her father's face the day he had returned home with the letter in his hand. The letter that said he was dismissed, that his work of 20 years meant nothing, that his name would be spoken with quiet disapproval from then on. He had tried to smile. He had told her they would manage. They had not. She reached the man's table. He looked up at her with resigned eyes. "It seems I am in the way again," he said. The words were soft, but they cut more cruelly than any shout. Elise glanced at the corner table near the kitchen door. Smoke drifted from the swinging kitchen entrance. The air there was hot and restless. The child who had been moved earlier sat there still, her chin on her hands, her gaze fixed on the better places she had been pushed away from. For a moment, Elise said nothing. She simply looked at the man, at his careful coat, at his polite posture. He had not demanded attention. He had not raised his voice. He had only asked for soup and bread. "Forgive me, monsieur," she said quietly. "May I ask your name?" He seemed surprised by the question. "Julien," he answered. "Julien Armand." She nodded slowly. "Monsieur Armand, you have paid for your meal. You have eaten in peace. You have disturbed no one." "That is not the question, Elise," the owner hissed from Vivian's side, his voice barely audible to anyone but her. "Do as she says." Elise's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her fingertips. She inhaled, the scent of soup and wax and nervous sweat filling her lungs. She turned. Vivian was watching her with mild impatience, as if this were a simple wait for a carriage rather than a test of someone else's dignity. "My lady," Elise said. The room seemed to lean closer. Vivian tilted her head. "Yes?" Elise felt the moment stretch. She heard her father's voice, weary and thin. "Do what you must to live, child. Do not invite trouble." Her own voice came out calm. "I cannot ask this gentleman to move," she said. "He has done nothing wrong. He has paid what he owes as any guest has. He sits where he was placed." The silence was not merely quiet, it was absolute. Even the street sounds seemed to fall away. Vivian blinked once. Slowly. "Perhaps," she replied, "you did not understand me." "I did, my lady," Elise answered, surprising herself with how steady her tone remained. "You are unhappy to sit near him, but he has not insulted you. He has not spoken to you. It would be unjust to humiliate him from his seat for no reason but his coat." A flush rose along the owner's neck. Pierre closed his eyes for a brief second, as if waiting to feel the ceiling fall. "Elise," the owner whispered sharply. "Enough." Vivian's face did not change at first. Then a faint smile curved one corner of her mouth. It was not a friendly expression. "How charming," she said. "A servant who speaks of justice." She rose slowly from her chair. The fabric of her gown whispered across the floor. She stood so close to Elise that the difference in their positions felt like a physical line on the ground. "Tell me your name again," Vivian said softly. "Elise Moreau, my lady." "Elise Moreau," Vivian repeated, as if committing each syllable to memory. "You are newly hired. You are poor. You have nothing but this position and your pretty stubbornness, and you have chosen to use it against me." Elise swallowed. "I have chosen only not to shame a guest who has done nothing wrong." "And in doing so you have shamed me," Vivian replied. "You imply that I am unjust, that my discomfort is not worthy of consideration." Her voice was still quiet, but now the edge beneath it was sharp enough to cut. "I meant no offense, my lady," Elise said. "I only wished—" Vivian lifted a hand. The gesture silenced her at once. "You wished," Vivian said, "to pretend that your opinion carries weight here. It does not. You are a girl who carries plates. I am the future princess of this realm." A murmur ran through the room at the word princess. Some guests glanced at one another, unsure if they should look away or keep watching. The man in the dark coat at the back did not move. His gaze was fixed on the two women at the center of the scene, his hands resting loosely around his cup. Vivian turned to the owner. "Dismiss her," she said. The owner's face went gray. "My lady, please, she is new." She did not understand. "Then she will learn," Vivian interrupted. "But not here." She looked back at Elise, eyes bright now with something colder than anger, the assurance of someone who believed herself untouchable. "You will remove your apron," she said. "You will walk out of this door. You will seek work elsewhere if any respectable establishment will have you after I speak of this evening. You will remember always that you lost your position because you forgot your place." Elise felt everything inside her tilt. This job, this narrow bridge over the abyss, was being kicked away beneath her feet. One word from this woman, and every door in the city would close. The owner began to stammer apologies. "My lady, I beg you. Perhaps a warning. She can learn. She is diligent." "I do not bargain over insults," Vivian said. "You must choose, monsieur, your new waitress or my continued patronage and that of my friends." The choice was no choice at all. The owner turned to Elise. His eyes were wet. "I am sorry," he whispered. "Truly I am. Give me your apron." Pierre's jaw tightened. "It is not right," he muttered under his breath. "It is what it is," the owner replied. Elise's fingers went numb on the strings of her apron. She thought of saying nothing, of handing it over, of walking away to keep what dignity she could. Perhaps that would have been wisdom. But something in her, worn yet unbroken, refused to bow one more time. She untied the apron. She folded it carefully. She placed it on the counter. Then she lifted her head and looked at Vivienne. "My lady," she said softly, "this gentleman will finish his meal where he sits. You are, of course, free to do as you please. If you find our company so unworthy, you may leave." The words hung in the air like a bell still ringing after the strike. The owner made a strangled sound. Someone at a nearby table gasped. The little girl in the corner stared with open mouth. Pierre's hand flew to his hair as if to tear it out. Vivienne's eyes darkened. For a moment she looked almost stunned, as if she could not quite believe what she had heard. "Say that again," she whispered. Elise's heart hammered, but she did not step back. "You may leave, my lady," she repeated, each word clear. "If you cannot bear to dine among ordinary people, then this is not the place for you." The restaurant held its breath. In the back corner, the man in the dark coat leaned forward, every nerve in his body awake. Vivienne's lips thinned. She did not raise her voice. She did not strike, or throw a glass, or cause any outward spectacle. Instead, she gathered her gloves and her fan from the table with exquisite care. "How extraordinary," she murmured, "a waitress who believes she can dismiss me." She turned to the room at large. "Let everyone here be witness," she said. "This establishment permits its servants to insult its guests. It allows them to dictate who is worthy to share the air with them. Remember this when you consider where to dine." She faced Elise one last time. "You have no idea," she said quietly, "what you have done." Then she swept toward the door, her steps smooth, her back perfectly straight. Her servant rushed to open it. The bells chimed again. bright and small, as she left. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then the room filled with low whispers, like the rustle of leaves before a storm. Some guests shook their heads in horror. Others looked at Elise with a strange light in their eyes, a mix of admiration and fear. The owner sank onto a chair, covering his face with his hands. Pierre came to Elise's side. "You should go," he said hoarsely, "before she sends someone back, before this becomes worse." Elise felt the floor under her feet, the weight of her empty hands, the echo of her own voice still ringing in her ears. She wanted to run. She wanted to cry. She wanted to laugh at the madness of it. Instead, she turned her head slowly, drawn by a feeling she could not name. Across the room, the man in the dark coat was watching her. His gaze was not pitying. It was intent, thoughtful, almost startled. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, and something passed between them, something that felt like recognition from a stranger. She did not know that this quiet observer was Prince Alexandre de Valmont himself, or that in defying Lady Vivienne, she had just earned both the hatred of the most feared woman in Paris and the secret attention of the man who was meant to marry her. The next morning, Paris looked the same, but nothing felt the same to Elise. The sky was pale. The streets were damp from a light rain. She stood in front of the restaurant door with her shawl clutched around her shoulders, staring at the polished brass handle as if it might bite. Pierre opened it before she could gather the courage to knock. "You should not have come," he said quietly. "I still work here," she answered. "Until someone tells me otherwise, I must." He stepped back to let her in. The dining room was empty, chairs still turned on tables. The mirrors reflected only dim light and the tired face of the owner who stood near the counter with a letter in his hand. "Close the door, Pierre," he said. Pierre obeyed. The quiet inside felt heavier than the noise of yesterday. The owner lifted his eyes to Elise. They were red-rimmed as if he had slept little. "Elise," he said, "you should be at home." "I need my wages," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And I need to know if I have work." He let out a thin sound that might have been a laugh. "You have courage," he said. "More than sense, perhaps, but courage." He held out the letter. "This arrived before dawn," he continued. "A footman from the Hotel Darcy delivered it. I did not need to open it to know the contents, but I did." "What does it say?" she asked. He cleared his throat and read, his tone flat. "To the proprietor of the establishment on Rue Saint-Honoré. After the intolerable insult dealt to my person by a member of your staff, and your failure to correct it in a manner fitting my rank, I find myself obliged to inform you that neither I nor any of my acquaintances will set foot in your building again. I shall consider it my duty to warn all respectable families of the conduct you condone. Signed, Lady Vivienne Darcy." He folded the letter slowly. "She speaks for half the nobility," he said. "Perhaps more. If they avoid me, I am finished." Elise swallowed. "I am sorry," she murmured, "but I could not." "I know," he cut in. "I saw his face too. The man she wanted moved. I saw the child in the corner. I am not blind, only weak." He rubbed a hand over his forehead. "Do you think I do not feel this?" he asked. "I built this place spoon by spoon. I hate that her word can break me, but it can." "I never wished to harm you," she whispered. "I know," he repeated. "That is why this is difficult." Pierre shifted his weight as if he wanted to speak, then thought better of it. The owner took a purse from behind the counter. "Your wages for the week," he said, placing it in her hand. "And a little more. It is not enough for what you have lost, but it is all I can spare without risking my family's bread." She closed her fingers around the coins. "Monsieur, please, if there is any way—" "There is no way," he replied, and his voice broke for the first time. "You heard her. She will not rest until she makes an example of you. If I keep you, I become part of that example." He forced himself to meet her eyes. "You must go," he said. "Today. At once." Before she sends someone worse than a letter, Pierre moved to protest. "Monsieur, at least let her serve until we find another—" "There is nothing to find," the owner said sharply. "The staff must be invisible now, silent, harmless. She has made that clear." He turned back to Elise, softer. "I wish you had come here on any other night," he said. "And I wish the world were kinder, but it is not." She nodded slowly. Her throat burned. "Thank you for feeding me this week," she said. "For giving me a chance." He flinched as if she had struck him. "Do not thank me," he answered. "I'm sending you back into the street with nothing but a purse and your pride. I'm not sure either will keep you warm." She reached for her apron out of habit, but of course she had left it on the counter the night before. Her hands closed on air. Pierre walked with her to the door. "If you need anything," he whispered. "I have old coats, some bread." She shook her head. "Keep them," she said. "You have a family." He hesitated at the threshold. "You were right," he murmured. "About the man. About what they did. I could not have spoken as you did, but you were right." "Being right does not pay for a room," she said, trying to make it sound lighter than she felt. He opened the door. A gust of cold air entered, carrying the distant rumble of carts and voices. "Take care, Elise," he said. She stepped out onto the street. The door closed behind her with a small final sound. By midday, half the neighborhood knew. She learned this as she walked from shop to shop, inn to inn, repeating the same question. "Are you hiring?" Always in the most polite tone she could manage, always with a hopeful tilt to her chin, as if the answer might change if she looked a little more determined. At the first bakery, the woman behind the counter shook her head. "We have enough hands," she said, "with mouths attached to them too. At the restaurant on the corner they let me go," Elise said. "I am quick and careful." "Yes, I heard," the baker's wife replied. "You let out the prince's fiancée. My aunt's neighbor's son was there." He could not stop talking about it. "It is not quite what happened," Elise began. The woman raised a hand. "I am sure it is not," she said. "Stories grow wings, but wings or not, they fly. My husband would faint if Lady Vivian heard that we took you in. He has weak nerves when it comes to noble anger." She seemed to regret her words a little. "I am sorry," she added. "Truly, you look like you need work, but I cannot." The little bell rang as Elise left. At a small inn near the market, the innkeeper's wife listened with narrowed eyes. "You are the girl from the restaurant, yes?" she said. "The one who spoke to that lady like she was anyone else." "I spoke as respectfully as I could," Elise replied, "but I would not push out a guest without cause." The woman leaned forward. "I heard you told her to leave," she whispered. "Is that true?" "Yes," Elise said, because there was no reason to lie now. The woman's lips pressed together. "You are either very foolish or very brave," she said. "Perhaps both." "Does it make a difference?" Elise asked tiredly. "Will you hire me?" The woman sighed. "If it were only my inn," she said. "Perhaps I would. I do not care for great ladies with sharp tongues. But my husband does business with aristocrats who pass through. If they heard—" "I understand," Elise said. She moved on. By late afternoon, her feet ached. Her purse was still heavy enough to clink, but she knew how quickly coins disappeared. Rent, bread, soap, a candle now and then. The list was short, yet the money vanished, as if the city swallowed it in the night. She turned into the narrow lane where she rented a small room under the roof of a tall, leaning house. The stairs creaked under her weight. As she climbed, she rehearsed what she might say to the landlady, how she might ask for an extra week before paying what she owed. She did not have to rehearse long. Madame Girard was already waiting at the top of the stairs, arms folded over her apron. "There you are," Madame Girard said. "I have heard interesting things." "Everyone seems to have heard," Elise replied. "The walls in this city must have ears." "The walls have mouths, my girl," the landlady said. "They repeat better than any parrot." She motioned toward Elise's door. "Come inside," she said. "We will speak without shouting to the neighbors." The room was small, a narrow bed, a chipped basin, a single chair. Through the tiny window, one could see only rooftops and a sliver of sky. It had been a blessing when she had first rented it. Now it felt like it might vanish. Madame Girard closed the door. "So," she began, "you are in trouble with a lady who could buy this whole building 10 times over and never notice the weight of the coins." "She treated a man as if he were dirt," Elise said. "She wanted him pushed into the shadows because his coat was worn. I could not do it." "And now you have no work," Madame Girard replied briskly. "Principles are light as feathers until they fall on your own roof." "I will find something," Elise said. "There must be a shop or a house that does not care what Lady Vivian thinks." Madame Girard gave a short laugh. "You are young enough to believe that," she said. "Listen to me, Elise. I have rented rooms for 20 years. I know how quickly a name can change from that quiet girl to the one no one wants to cross. She glanced at the small trunk by the bed. "You owe me 2 weeks' rent," she said. "I am not a noble woman, but I have mouths to feed. My sister and her 3 boys live in the back room. My husband's wages are not what they once were." "I know," Elise replied. "I have some money. It is not enough for all, but it is—" "That is the trouble," the landlady cut in. "It is not enough. Even if I give you time, what then? If you cannot find work because of this scandal, will I house you for free until the sun rises in the west?" The words were harsh, but her eyes were not. "I do not want to put you out," Madame Girard said. "You are quiet, you break nothing, you do not bring drunkards to the stairs. But if the ladies' men come asking questions, if the neighbors talk of it, tenants will be nervous. They will say I keep dangerous company." "Dangerous?" Elise repeated, almost laughing. "I carried plates." "You talked back to power," the landlady replied. "In this city, that is enough." Silence stretched between them. "How long can you give me?" Elise asked at last. Madame Girard considered. 3 days, she said. "Pay what you can now. I will not count every coin. After 3 days, if you have not found work or help, you must go. I cannot risk more." Elise nodded. "Thank you," she said. She opened her purse and poured half of the coins into the landlady's palm. The sound of metal was too loud in the small room. "Keep a little," Madame Girard said gruffly. "You will need to eat." When she left, Elise sank onto the bed. Her hands lay limp in her lap. The walls felt closer. For a moment she allowed herself to close her eyes. She saw the restaurant again, the light on the glasses, the man called Julian, the child pushed from the good table. She heard Vivian's voice. "You will remember always that you lost your position because you forgot your place." Then another voice rose in her memory, quieter, lower, the man in the dark coat in the corner, speaking to no one, but watching everything. The way he had looked at her as she stood alone before Vivian. Not with scorn or pity, but with a kind of troubled attention. She shook the thought away. Whoever he was probably telling the tale in some better room now, laughing with his friends about the reckless girl who dismissed a future princess. She pushed herself to her feet. 3 days. That was all. She would not spend them lying down. While Elise counted coins and days, another sort of counting took place in very different rooms. At the Hotel Darcy, Vivienne recounted the evening like a storyteller, trimming and embellishing each line. "They let me sit beside a man whose coat smelled of cheap smoke," she said to a circle of elegantly dressed ladies. "Can you imagine? I thought for a moment I had wandered into a roadside inn." Gasps rose. "In that place," one lady cried. "My husband has taken clients there. He said it was refined." "Refined," Vivienne repeated, tasting the word as if it were sour. "They hire girls from the gutter who think they are philosophers. This one spoke to me as if we were equals. She even told me I could leave my chair if I was unhappy." "Me?" Murmurs swelled. "What was her name?" another asked. Vivienne smiled faintly. "Elise Moreau," she said. "It matters very little. No one will wish to remember it, except to avoid her." "And the owner did nothing?" a man at the edge of the group asked. "He let this stand?" "He hesitated," Vivienne said. "But I explained the position he had placed himself in. I believe he understands it now." She sipped her wine. "I only mention this," she went on casually, "because such establishments reflect on our city. If they do not respect rank, they do not respect order. And if they cannot keep their staff in line, what else might they allow?" Her listeners nodded, each hearing what they wished to hear. Some heard a warning about behavior. Others heard an opportunity to show loyalty by boycotting the place she disfavored. By the time they left, the story had grown new twists. The girl had shouted, or thrown a cloth on the table, or put her hands on her hips. Each telling made Elise a little more wild, Vivian a little more wronged. At the palace, the tale arrived like a piece of entertainment. 2 young nobles told it between sips of wine in a side hall. "Imagine it, Your Highness," one of them laughed. "A little waitress with flour on her hands, saying to Lady Vivienne, 'You may leave if you do not like it.'" I almost wish I had been there to see Vivienne's face. Prince Alexandre de Valmont did not laugh. He sat near a tall window, the late sun outlining his profile. He looked more like a thoughtful officer than a prince at that moment, his coat plain compared to the bright figures around him. "And did she truly say it?" he asked. "So they say," the noble replied. "My cousin's friend claims he was at the very table beside them." "They all claim to have been next to the fire when lightning strikes," Alexandra said dryly. "What did Vivienne say of it?" "She called the girl insolent," the other noble answered. "She left the restaurant at once. I believe she has sent word that none of us should go there again." "And the girl?" Alexandra asked. "What became of her?" His friend shrugged. "What do you think?" he said lightly. "A girl like that will not find work in any decent house now. Perhaps she will marry a cobbler and tell the story for the rest of her life every time someone passes a carriage." The thought did not amuse Alexandra. He rose, crossing to a small table where a decanter stood. "Lady Vivienne must have been provoked to show such displeasure," he said. "She is usually more composed." The nobles exchanged glances. They knew Vivienne well enough to know her temper, but they also knew better than to speak of it too plainly to the man who would soon stand beside her at the altar. "One hears things," one of them said carefully. "She does not enjoy being contradicted." Alexandra poured a small glass and set it down without drinking. "Nor do most people in her position," he replied. "And what of this waitress? Did anyone say why she spoke out?" Another noble, who had been quiet, cleared his throat. "I heard that the girl refused to move a patron who had paid for his meal," he said. "She did not wish to humiliate him." Alexandra looked at him sharply. "Is that so?" he asked. "That is what my brother's clerk heard from a cousin," the man answered. "It is difficult to be certain. These things change with each telling." Alexandra nodded slowly, but the detail lodged in his mind. A servant risking her position not for herself but for a stranger at a table. Later that evening, he found himself alone with his mother, the Queen, in a small sitting room. She embroidered. He pretended to read. The quiet between them was comfortable. "Mother," he said suddenly, "did you hear of Vivienne's little scene at the restaurant?" She did not look up from her needle. "I hear of all Vivienne's scenes," she said. "She makes certain of it. What troubles you about this one?" "A servant girl stood up to her," Alexandra said. "It seems Vivienne demanded that a man be moved because his coat offended her. The waitress refused." His mother's hands paused for a moment. "Refused," she repeated. "That is daring. They say she lost her position for it," Alexandra added. The Queen resumed her stitching. "Daring has a price in this city," she said. "You know that. Do you think the girl was wrong?" he asked. Her eyes lifted to his. "I was not there," she replied. "Nor were you. But I have seen Vivienne when she is contradicted. I doubt the girl chose this path lightly." He hesitated. "Do you approve of Vivienne?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Approval is a small word in politics, my son," she said. "Vivienne's family has influence. Her dowry is considerable. Her connections are useful. You asked me once what I thought of her as a person. I told you then, and I tell you now, she is clever and controlled. Whether that pleases you as a husband is your question to answer, not mine." He leaned back. "She has never spoken of justice," he said softly. "Only of advantage. Few in her position do," his mother replied. "That is why those who do speak of it stand out, even when they are only waitresses." Their eyes met in understanding. "Do not let curiosity alone guide you, Alexandra," she added gently. "The people are restless. Every story about nobles and servants carries more weight than before. If you intervene, you must know why you do so." He nodded. "I want to know the truth," he said. "Not of Vivienne's story, but of this girl's. Why she did what she did. What kind of person risks so much for a stranger?" "Then find out," the Queen said, discreetly. That night, Alexandra called for Henri, his most trusted attendant, a man who had served him since boyhood. "You know the city better than anyone in this palace," Alexandra said. "Do you know the restaurant on Rue Saint-Honoré?" Henri nodded. "I do, sir. Good food. Better gossip." "There was an incident there," Alexandra continued. "A waitress and Lady Vivienne. I want to know what really happened, not what people say to flatter her." Henri's brows rose. "That may be a long list, sir." "Begin by finding the girl," Alexandra said. "Her name is Elise Moreau. She worked there only a short time. She has been dismissed." Henri hesitated. "May I ask why you are interested?" he said. "Because I am to marry a woman whose temper can destroy livelihoods in an evening," Alexandra answered plainly. "And because I cannot rule a country if I know only how my equals behave. I must know how it feels when someone like my future wife points and says, 'Remove that man. Remove that girl.'" Henri inclined his head. "I will make inquiries," he said. "Quietly. Do not mention my name," Alexandra added. "Tell them only that a gentleman wishes to know." Henri smiled faintly. "That will hardly be unusual," he said. "Gentlemen always wish to know." By the next afternoon, Henri returned. "I have news, sir," he said. "Not all of it good." Alexandra signaled for him to continue. "The girl does not work at the restaurant anymore," Henri reported. "That you knew. The owner is shaken. He confirmed that she spoke out to defend a patron. A man alone, modestly dressed. All he wanted was to finish his meal. And she refused to move him," Alexandra said. "Yes," Henri replied. "Calmly, from what I hear. She did not shout. She did not insult. She only said it was unjust." "And Vivienne?" Alexandra asked. "She took offense," Henri said carefully. "She demanded the girl be dismissed. The owner complied." Alexandra exhaled slowly. "Did the girl speak rudely to Vivienne?" he pressed. Henri hesitated. "That depends on who tells the tale," he said. "Some say she told Lady Vivienne to leave if she disliked the company. Others say she only suggested it, very politely. Either way, she did what no one else dared." "And now?" Alexandra asked. "Where is she?" Henri shifted his weight. "She has been to every shop and inn within 10 streets asking for work," he said. "Most will not take her. They fear Vivienne's disfavor. Her landlady has given her 3 days to find another position or vacate her room." Alexandra's jaw tightened. "How long ago was that?" he asked. "Yesterday morning," Henri said. "So she has 2 days now. Perhaps less if the landlady is skittish." Alexandra walked to the window. The palace gardens spread below, calm, orderly. Beyond them, unseen, lay crowded streets and thin walls and women like Elise trying to stretch 3 days into a lifetime. "Where is her lodging?" he asked. Henri named the street. "Very well," Alexandra said. "Send for my plain traveling coat, the dark one, and have a carriage brought to the side gate without insignia." Henri's eyes widened slightly. "You mean to go yourself?" he asked. "Yes," Alexandra replied. "I will not judge this girl from a distance through 10 layers of gossip. I will speak to her. And if Lady Vivienne hears that you have gone chasing a waitress through the poorer streets of Paris," Henri said carefully. Alexandra's mouth curved in a mirthless smile. "Then she will learn," he said, "that I do not enjoy making decisions about people I have never met." Henri bowed. "I will see to the carriage," he said. As Henri left, Alexandra changed into the plain coat, the one he used when he wished to be only another gentleman on the street. It was still good cloth, but without embroidery or ornament. He covered his hair, removed the ring that marked his rank, and studied his reflection for a brief moment. He saw a man with responsibilities growing heavier by the day, and a curiosity that would not be silenced. He stepped out by the side gate, where a dark, unmarked carriage waited, the horses shifting their weight in the chill air. The door closed behind him with a soft thud. "Rue des Tisserands," he told the driver, "near the upper end." The carriage rolled forward, leaving the ordered gravel of the palace for the uneven cobbles of the city, carrying a prince in plain clothes toward a girl who sat alone in a fading room, wondering how many doors would close before one finally opened. Elise woke on her second day of borrowed time with a stiffness in her neck and a knot in her stomach. Light slipped past the edge of the window, grey and uncertain. She sat up, listened to the sounds in the house. The landlady's steps, a child coughing, a pot clattering in the kitchen below, life going on, with or without her. She dressed quickly, smoothing her skirt, tying her hair back with fingers that felt clumsy. 2 days, she thought, 2 days to become useful to someone or to start wondering which bridge had the driest space beneath it. She was halfway down the stairs when Madame Girard called after her. "Are you going to conquer the city, are you?" "I'm going to find work," Elise replied. "Conquering can come later." The landlady snorted. "Bring back good news, or at least bread." On the street, the air was fresh and cold. Carts rattled past. A boy shouted the price of oranges. Nothing in Paris seemed aware that one small life was tipping toward the edge. She started with the narrower lanes this time, places where people still looked each other in the eye. A seamstress's shop, a small cafe, a laundry that smelled of soap and steam. Everywhere the same pattern, a glance, a flicker of recognition when she gave her name, a polite refusal wrapped in regret. "Ah, Mademoiselle Moreau. You are the one from the restaurant, yes? I admire what you did, truly, but you do not wish to anger Lady Vivian, she finished for them, saving them the effort. Exactly, they would say, relieved. By mid-morning she found herself drifting toward the market, drawn by the noise and warmth. Stalls crowded the square, filled with vegetables, ribbons, second-hand boots. The smell of baking bread pulled her toward a small bakery with a narrow window and a line of customers at the door. Inside, a flour-dusted woman moved between counter and oven with the precision of a general. A man kneaded dough in the back. The air was thick with heat and the sound of coins on wood. Elise stood aside, waiting until the line thinned. When there were only 2 customers left, she approached the counter. "Madame," she began. The woman glanced up, sweeping hair from her face with her wrist. "Yes?" "I am looking for work," Elise said. "As a helper, server, whatever you need. I can move quickly, I learn fast." The baker's wife eyed her. "You have experience with bread?" "I have experience carrying plates without dropping them," Elise replied. "And not burning my fingers on hot dishes. Bread cannot be worse than that." A corner of the woman's mouth twitched. "We already have enough hands," she said. "My niece helps in the mornings." "I will work for little," Elise added quickly. "Truly. Just enough to eat and to keep my room." The woman hesitated, then shook her head. "Even so," she said, "we are not hiring. Times are not as good as they look. People sniff at the price of flour and complain that bread is smaller than it was." "I understand," Elise murmured. She began to turn away. "Madame," a male voice said behind her, clear and courteous. "Might I have a word?" She glanced back. A man stood just inside the doorway, having stepped in when she was talking. He wore a plain, dark coat, well cut but without decoration, boots that had seen use but were well maintained, and gloves held in one hand. His hair was neatly tied back. His face was unremarkable in the way that made it easy to overlook, but there was something about the way he stood, balanced yet relaxed, that drew the eye. He gave the baker's wife a small bow. "I have tasted your bread before, madame," he said. "It is excellent. I was thinking of recommending your bakery to some acquaintances of mine, but I noticed how busy you are and how many customers you have. You must be very tired." "We manage," she replied, wary but flattered. "One does not sleep much." "Then perhaps you might profit from an extra pair of hands, at least for the afternoons," he said, "only to help at the counter. It would allow you to rest more or to bake a few more loaves. With more loaves, you might sell more. I know a merchant who would be glad to mention your bread at his gatherings." The woman's eyes sharpened. "A merchant?" "Yes," he said easily. "He holds small suppers. People talk. They notice where their bread comes from. If he praised your bakery, you might find your name traveling farther than this street." The baker's wife glanced at Elise, then back at the man. "And you would do this for a stranger?" she asked. He smiled. "For good bread," he said. "And because I dislike seeing a willing worker turned away when my recommendation might help both of you." She considered him for a long moment. "You speak well," she said. "Too well for that coat." "It is an old habit," he said lightly. "I will try to be more clumsy next time." She laughed once, short and surprised. "Very well," she said, turning to Elise. "You can help at the counter for the rest of the week, afternoons only. If you are useless, I will tell you so. If you are not, we will speak again." Relief flooded Elise so quickly she almost swayed. "Thank you," she said. "You will not regret it." "We shall see," the woman replied. "Come back after the bells ring noon." "Yes, madame." Elise stepped outside, still dazed. The man followed, letting the door close behind them. "Thank you," she said quickly, facing him. "I do not know what merchant you meant, but—" "I meant one who will be glad to hear of another good bakery," he said. "Nothing more." He studied her face briefly, as if checking that she truly was the person he sought. "You are Elise Moreau," he said. "From the restaurant on Rue Saint-Honoré." She stiffened. "If you are here to laugh about last night, you can save your breath," she said. "Jokes tend not to pay rent." "I'm not here to laugh at you," he replied calmly. "Quite the opposite. My name is Alexandra. I was present that evening." Her brow furrowed. "I did not see you." He tilted his head. "That is often the safest way to see other people, from a corner." It clicked slowly. "The man in the dark coat," she said. "In the back. You were there." "Yes," he confirmed. I watched the entire scene. Her cheeks warmed. Then you saw how foolish I was. I saw a woman refusing to humiliate a man for the sake of another's comfort, he said quietly. That did not look foolish to me. Perhaps you did not see the part where I lost my position, she said, or the part where every door closes when they hear my name. I have heard that has happened, he admitted. I am sorry. It was my choice, she replied. I do not regret what I said. I only regret that I must still eat. That is often the heart of the matter, he said. May I walk with you? She studied him. There was something strange about him. Not his clothes, they were unadorned. Not his speech, educated. But many clerks and teachers spoke like that. It was the way he seemed used to being attended to, and yet kept stepping aside so she could move first. Are you a merchant? She asked. Not exactly, he said, but I am familiar with money, and with those who hold it. That sounds like a riddle, she said. Perhaps I enjoy riddles, he answered. She could not decide whether to be amused or cautious. I must return at noon, she said. Until then I walk to waste time. If you wish to waste it with me, you may. I would like that, he said. They moved through the market together. He did not try to take her arm, he matched his steps to hers. And your trade, Monsieur Alexandre, she asked, since you know about money. Let us say I manage affairs for a large household, he replied. I read numbers. I listen. I try to keep things from collapsing. That sounds like a heavy task, she said. At times, he agreed, but someone must try. And this household, she pressed. Does it dine with ladies like Vivian Darcy? He glanced at her. Sometimes, he said cautiously. Then you must know her, Elise replied. I have met her, he said, more than once. And do you find her fair? She asked. You watched her last night. You heard what she said. Do you think I was wrong? He took a breath, held it, and let it go. I think you were right that the man had done nothing to deserve being pushed aside, he said. I think you were right to see him, when others did not. As for Vivian, she is used to being obeyed. She believes rank must be protected. That is not uncommon. That is not an answer, Elise said. He smiled faintly. It is the only one I can give, without speaking unfairly of someone who is not here to defend herself. So you defend her? She asked. I defend the truth, he replied. She was humiliated. She is not used to that. I do not excuse the cruelty, but I understand the reaction. Understanding is a luxury, she muttered. I would settle for a job. You have one for now, he reminded her. We bought you some time. We, she repeated. I made the suggestion, he said. You earned the place with your willingness. Do not give me too much credit. She shook her head, amused despite herself. You speak as if you do not wish to be thanked, she said. Gratitude makes me uncomfortable, he replied. That is a strange flaw, she said. Strange but honest, he answered. They walked in silence for a few steps. Tell me, he said after a moment, was this the first time you spoke against someone like Vivian? Or have you always had this habit? She laughed softly. My father used to say I had more opinions than coins, she said. But I did not always speak them aloud. At least not where it mattered. What did he do? Alexandra asked. He was a clerk, she said, in an office that handled public accounts. He worked with numbers and papers all day, every day. He liked it. He said numbers were honest if you looked at them properly. They could not change their story because a noblewoman frowned. And yet, he prompted gently. And yet, one day they did, she said. There were irregularities, they claimed. Money missing, ledgers wrong. They needed someone to blame. My father was convenient. He had no powerful friends. He was careful enough to notice mistakes and quiet enough to be silenced. Did he defend himself? Alexandra asked, his voice lower. As much as he could, she replied. He wrote letters, explained, showed the papers he had kept. It did not matter. The decision had been made somewhere above him. They stamped his dismissal and left us to carry the stain. That is unjust, he said. She shrugged one shoulder. It is the way of things. Someone important makes an error and someone less important pays. That is why last night when she pointed at that man, I could not pretend he was only a coat and not a person. You think his story might be like your father's, Alexandra said. I think it could be anyone's story, she replied. Yours, mine, his. The moment you let people like her decide who is dirt and who is welcome, we are all at risk. He looked at her for a long time, thoughtful. You speak like someone who has watched more than she says, he murmured. When you have nothing, you see more, she answered. You have to. They had wandered to the edge of the square, where the houses grew taller and their doors more ornate. Alexandra checked the sun's position. You must return soon, he said. The baker's wife will not be pleased if her new helper arrives late on her first day. You speak as if you know her temper already, Elise said. I recognize the type, he replied. Capable, tired, suspicious of charm. She will value competence and punctuality above all. You see much for someone who just manages accounts, she said. So do you for someone who just carried plates, he answered. She smiled despite herself. Then we are both wrong about what we are, she said. Perhaps, he agreed. He glanced at a row of townhouses across the street. I have a small task to attend to nearby, he said. May I escort you back to the bakery first? I can find it, she replied. I do not doubt it, he said, but you might have to fight your way through 3 customers and a crate of cabbages. Allow me at least the illusion of being useful. She rolled her eyes. Very well, monsieur. You may be useful. They turned back toward the market. On the way, the crowd thickened. At one corner, a delivery boy struggled with a basket overflowing with bread loaves. The strap slipped. The basket lurched. The boy stumbled. Before he could drop it, Elise stepped forward, catching the edge. Careful, she said. You will be chased by hungry ghosts if you lose this. The boy laughed, red-faced. Thank you, mademoiselle. You see? Alexandra said quietly. Useful. Anyone could have done that, she replied. Perhaps, he said, but you did. They reached the bakery a few minutes before noon. The smell of fresh loaves poured out as the door opened and closed, customers going in and out. I should go, she said. The general awaits. May I come by later? He asked. When you finish. I would like to hear how your first day went. You are very interested in my employment, she said. I am very interested in you, he corrected gently, then added, in your story, in what you saw at the office where your father worked, and in what happened at the restaurant. She hesitated. I suppose it would be ungrateful to refuse to speak to the man who may have saved me from starving, she said. Come back toward evening. If I am not too exhausted to stand, I will talk. I will take that risk, he said with a slight bow. Until then, Mademoiselle Moreau. He stepped back as she went inside. Once she had disappeared behind the counter, his expression shifted. The easy smile faded, replaced by a more serious calm. He turned away and walked toward the row of larger houses they had passed earlier. Henri waited in a doorway, arms folded. You found her, Henri said quietly. Yes, Alexandra replied. She is exactly what I expected. And more. Stubborn? Henri asked. Principled, Alexandra corrected. She speaks of justice as if it were as ordinary as bread. No drama, no self-pity. And Vivienne, Henri said. She will not like that. She already does not, Alexandra said. That is partly why we are here. He glanced up at the townhouse Henri indicated with a nod. In there? He asked. Yes, sir, Henri said. An undersecretary to one of Vivienne's cousins lives there. He has a loose tongue and a love of wine. Servants have overheard him mention certain papers, ledgers, contracts, the ones we discussed. The ones that implicate clerks like Elise's father, Alexandra said softly. It seems likely, Henri answered. He spoke of a man who took the blame when others erred. The dates match, the office matches, the family matches. Alexandra's jaw tightened. And Vivienne? He asked. Her name came up, Henri said. She is said to have taken charge of the documents. She keeps them safe. They call it her insurance. Against what? Alexandra asked. Against being ignored, Henri replied. Against being replaced. Against anyone questioning the way money flows. Alexandra exhaled slowly. And today? He asked. Will he speak again? He meets a friend for lunch, Henri said. Here, they drink, they gossip if someone happens to linger near the door. I see, Alexandra murmured. Then we shall linger. He positioned himself casually near the townhouse, as if studying the ironwork on the balconies. Henri drifted a little farther away, a man waiting for someone who was late. Time passed. A bell chimed the hour. Carriages rattled by. Then 2 men approached, laughing. One fumbled with a key at the door, muttering about locks. The other leaned in close. Have you heard? He said. The prince's lady nearly caused a riot at a restaurant. Of course I have heard, the first replied. She told me herself. She was in excellent form. It did her good, I think, to crush something. They went inside, leaving the door barely closed. Their voices slipped out through the gap, threads of conversation. Speaking of crushing, the second said, how goes the matter of those old accounts? Quietly, the first replied. They are locked where no one can find them. Lady Vivian made sure of that. She is no fool. And the poor clerks who took the blame, the second asked lazily. They are forgotten, the first replied. Names on yellowed pages. One of them died, I think. Heart trouble, or hunger. It is all the same. Alexandra felt his hands curl into fists inside his gloves. He forced them to relax. Vivian says the papers are her debt of blood, the first continued with a chuckle. She means that if anyone ever crosses her, she will spill ink instead of blood. She will reveal just enough to wound the right people and hide enough to keep herself safe. And the prince? The second asked. Does he know? Of course not, the first scoffed. He thinks in terms of honor and duty. He would not understand how the game is played. Their voices faded as they moved deeper into the house. Alexandra stood very still. Debt of blood, he repeated under his breath. She laughs about ruined lives as if they were cards in her hand. Henri approached quietly. You heard? He asked. Yes, Alexandra said. More than enough. And Elise's father, Henri said. Do you think? I think he is part of the deck she keeps up her sleeve, Alexandra replied grimly. And so are others. She uses their suffering as a shield. He looked back toward the bakery, visible at the end of the street. I cannot tell Elise yet, he said. Not until I know where the documents are. Not until I can do something about them. But I understand now why her story sounded so familiar. It is not unique, it is a pattern. And you? Henri asked softly. What will you do? For now, I will keep listening, Alexandra said, and I will keep speaking to the one person in this city who seems to see these patterns without flinching. He straightened his coat. Go back to the palace, he told Henri. Say nothing of this conversation to anyone. If Vivienne suspects we know, she will move the papers. And you? Henri asked. I have an appointment with a baker's assistant, Alexandra replied, and I would hate to be late. He walked back toward the square. By the time the sun dipped lower, the bakery was calmer. The rush of customers had slowed. Flour dusted Elise's sleeves. A streak of dough clung to her cheek. As she handed a loaf to an elderly woman, she caught a familiar figure at the door. Alexandra waited just inside, hat in hand. The baker's wife noticed too. Your friend is back, she said. He has good timing. The worst is past. He is not my friend, Elise said quickly, then caught herself. He is someone who helps. Keep such someones, the woman replied. They are rare. When the last customer left, she waved Elise toward the door. Go, she said. You have worked enough for one day. Come early tomorrow. We will see if your legs still function. They ache, Elise admitted. Good, the woman said. That means they are learning. Outside, the air felt cooler after the heat of the ovens. Alexandra stepped forward. How was the general? He asked. She only shouted when I miscounted the coins, Elise said, which I deserved. But she paid me a few sous and did not call me girl from the gutter, so I consider it a success. I am glad, he said. May I walk with you again? I suppose so, she said. After a day of listening to the price of flour, I could use a different topic. They crossed the square together. The market was thinning, though a few stalls remained. A ribbon seller argued with a customer. A man closed shutters on a bookshop. Tell me something, Alexandra said. You spoke of your father's letters. Did anyone ever answer them? No one important, she replied. A minor clerk wrote once to say the matter was regrettable, but could not be revisited. That was all. The letters themselves, he said. Do you still have them? She nodded. In my trunk, she said. I cannot read them without feeling ill, but I cannot throw them away. They are the only proof we have that he tried. May I see them some day? He asked. Not now. When you are ready. She frowned. Why? Because I work with papers too, he said. I may recognize a name, a signature, something that could tell us where the blame truly lay. You speak as if you would do something about it, she said. I would try, he replied simply. No one in your position cares about a clerk's name on an old page, she said. You do not know my position, he reminded her. Then explain it, she said. I do not like riddles I cannot solve. He opened his mouth, and a carriage wheel struck a stone nearby with a sharp jolt. They both turned. A dark, glossy carriage had entered the square, moving more slowly than the carts. The crest on its door shone even in the fading light. Elise's stomach plunged. Lady Vivienne Darcy sat inside, visible through the open window, her profile as perfectly composed as it had been at the restaurant. 2 attendants rode at the back. People on foot stepped aside instinctively. Of all the corners of Paris, Elise muttered, she chooses this one. She moves in wide circles, Alexandra said quietly. Vivienne's gaze swept the square. For a heartbeat, it slid over Elise and did not stop. Then it slid back. Her eyes narrowed. The carriage slowed. Stop, she said to the driver. The horses stamped as the carriage came to a halt a few paces from where Elise and Alexandra stood. Vivienne leaned forward. Well, she said lightly, Paris is smaller than I thought. Her eyes travelled from Elise's flower-dusted skirt to Alexandra's plain coat. Her lips curved. Have you found a new stage for your speeches, Mademoiselle Moreau? She asked. Or have you taken to entertaining gentlemen in the street instead? Heat rushed to Elise's face. I am working at the bakery, she said. Serving customers, as I should. Vivienne's gaze flicked to the bakery sign. How fitting, she said. Bread and words. You seem to enjoy feeding people your opinions more than their meals. Alexandra stepped half a pace forward. Madame, he said calmly, it seems unnecessary to continue this quarrel in public. And who are you? She asked, turning her attention on him. Her protector? Her acquaintance, he said. Nothing more. Acquaintances can be expensive, Vivienne replied, especially when they are seen with the wrong people. She tilted her head, studying him. You are well spoken for someone in such simple clothes, she observed, and you stand as if you expect your orders to be obeyed. Curious. I have no orders to give here, he said, only a suggestion. Let the matter rest. The girl has lost enough. Has she? Vivienne said. She seems to have acquired something, a gentleman eager to speak for her. Perhaps I was not the only one she wished to impress. Her words pricked more than a shout would have. I did not seek to impress anyone, Elise said, her voice tight. Least of all you. Vivienne's eyes snapped back to her. Still brave, she murmured. You really do not know how to learn, do you? She looked at Alexandra again, more closely this time. Her gaze lingered on his posture, his hands, the way he held his head. Your face is familiar, she said slowly. Have we met at some salon, some supper? I cannot quite place you. I do not think so, he replied. I rarely attend such gatherings. She watched him with new attention, as if testing the shape of his words against some private memory. I hear interesting things, Vivienne went on, her tone smooth once more. About old papers, old names, old debts. Some people think such matters are forgotten. They are not. I keep them very close, in case they are useful. She glanced at Elise just briefly, and in that glance Elise felt a chill that had nothing to do with the evening air. What kind of debts? Elise asked quietly. Vivienne smiled. Oh, small things, she said. Errors in ledgers, signatures on documents, clerks who signed where they were told, and then cried unfair when the tide turned. One must be careful where one's name appears. The ink lasts longer than the excuses. Her words fell like pebbles into a well. Elise's fingers curled at her sides. You speak as if ruining lives were a pastime, she said. I speak as someone who understands leverage, Vivienne replied. It is what separates those who drift with the current from those who steer. She tapped the side of the carriage with her fan. Take care, Mademoiselle Moreau, she added softly. Some stories are heavier than you can lift. If you go poking through old papers, you may find yourself buried beneath them. She turned her gaze back to Alexandra. And you, monsieur, she said. I shall remember your face. It may come to me at an inconvenient moment. I trust you will be as calm then as you are now. The driver snapped the reins gently. The carriage began to roll forward. Vivienne's eyes lingered on them both, thoughtful and sharp. Like someone examining 2 pieces of a puzzle she was suddenly very interested in solving. And as her gaze settled, with unsettling focus, first on Elise, and then on the quiet Alexandre at her side, Elise felt for the first time that both this stranger and Lady Vivienne were woven into the same secret that had destroyed her father. The carriage rolled away, and the square slowly resumed its usual noise, but the air around Elise still felt tight. She watched the wheels disappear around the corner, then turned to Alexandre. "You knew," she said quietly, "about papers, about old debts. You asked about my father's letters before she ever spoke of them. How much of my story did you already guess?" He met her eyes, steady. "Enough to know it was not an accident," he said. "Not yet enough to repair it." She crossed her arms, hugging herself against a chill that had nothing to do with weather. "And who are you really," she said, "that you overhear such things, and speak of merchants, and walk with me as if the prince's fiancée does not frighten you?" He hesitated, then shook his head slightly. "Not here," he said. "Not in the middle of the square, with every ear hungry. Let me arrange a place where we can speak without being overheard." "I do not walk into strangers' private rooms," she replied. "You did last night," he said gently, "when you went home to your attic." She flushed. "That is different." "It is," he agreed. "So I will not ask you to trust a stranger. I will give you a name and an address, someone you can ask about if you wish, a man of business, a loyal friend to my employer." She narrowed her eyes at the pause. "Who is this man of business?" she asked. "His name is Monsieur Delcourt," Alexandre said. "He lives near the Tuileries in a modest townhouse. He handles accounts for several prominent families. If you ask any shopkeeper on that street, they will tell you he is respectable. And you will be there," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Tomorrow, after you finish at the bakery, bring your father's letters. I will bring what I know. We will put the pieces together. And I will tell you who I am." She studied him. Behind his calm, she saw tension, as if he were balancing on some narrow ledge she could not see. "What if I do not come?" she asked. "Then I will know you do not wish to speak to me again," he said, "and I will try to help your cause from a distance, without forcing myself into your life." His answer was simple, without pressure. That, more than anything, made it harder to refuse. "All right," she said at last. "I will come. If Madame Girard does not throw my trunk out the window before then, tell her you have work, and that someone in a better coat than mine will vouch that you do," he said. "People trust coats." She almost smiled, then remembered Vivienne's disdain. "I have learned not to trust coats," she said, "but I will be there." He bowed his head. "Until tomorrow, then." He left her at the corner, turning toward the quieter streets. She watched him go, feeling as if the ground under her feet had begun to tilt in a direction she had not chosen. That night, back in her small room, she opened her trunk. The letters lay at the bottom, wrapped in an old linen cloth. Her father's handwriting filled the pages, neat even when his heart must have been pounding. She traced the first line with her fingertip. "To whom it may concern in the office of public accounts. I will try to help those who have done no wrong," he had once told her. "The whole point of rules is to protect the honest, not punish them." And yet it had been him who was punished. She almost put the letters back. Then she pictured Vivienne's smile and Alexandre's grave expression in the square. With a small, tight nod to herself, she slipped the packet into her satchel. Madame Girard caught sight of it as she came up with a jug of water. "Packing?" the landlady asked. "Not yet," Elise replied. "I found work at a bakery, for a few days at least." "You move quickly," Madame Girard said, surprised. "Perhaps I misjudged the city." "A man spoke for me," Elise said. "He claimed to know people." "A man always knows people," the landlady muttered. "The question is whether those people know him." "He seemed honest," Elise said. "They all do at first," Madame Girard answered. Then her gaze softened. "But if he found you work, he cannot be all bad. I will give you another week before I start shouting." "Thank you," Elise said. "Do not thank me," the landlady replied. "Just keep bringing home coins instead of stories." The next day at the bakery was harder. Her arms ached from lifting trays. Her head spun with numbers. The baker's wife barked corrections but never cruelty. At noon, she shoved a small piece of bread into Elise's hand. "Eat," she ordered. "You count better when you are not fainting." "What if I miscount your loaves?" Elise said. "Then I will shout again," the woman replied. "Go on, By late afternoon, flour covered Elise's dress and her back felt like a board. But she had a few coins in her pocket and a task in her mind. "Go before it gets dark," the baker's wife said, waving her away. "If you fall asleep on your feet, you will tip into the dough, and I will have to sell you as a new kind of bread." "That would be a poor bargain for the customer," Elise said, smiling. "Perhaps," the woman replied, "but it would keep you from starving." Outside, the sky was sliding toward evening. She adjusted her shawl and set off toward the address Alexandra had given her. The street near the Tuileries was quieter, the houses taller and more regular. No laundry flapped from the windows here. The door numbers were polished. She stopped before a neat blue door with a brass knocker. Monsieur Delcourt read the little plate beside it. She took a breath and knocked. A servant opened almost at once, a young woman with tidy hair and an efficient air. "Yes?" the servant asked. "I am here to see Monsieur Alexandre," Elise said. "He told me to ask for him here." The servant nodded, unsurprised. "Come in," she said. "He is expected." The hallway smelled faintly of ink and beeswax. Voices drifted from a room at the back. The servant led her to a small sitting room, simple but well kept, with 2 chairs and a table holding a pot of tea. Alexandre stood by the window, his coat neater than the one he had worn in the market, but still without ornament. Beside him sat a man in his 40s with ink-stained fingers and an open ledger on his lap. "Thank you, Marie," Alexandre said to the servant. "You may leave us." She bobbed a curtsy and withdrew. The man with the ledger rose. "Mademoiselle Moreau," he said, "I am Delcourt. Alexandre has spoken of you." "I hope not too much," she replied, cautious. "Only enough to request my hospitality," Delcourt said. "Any friend of his can sit safely here. I'm going to pretend not to listen to your conversation, even though I must stay in the next room in case someone calls at the door." "You have my gratitude," Alexandra said quietly. Delcourt nodded and left them alone. The room seemed to shrink. "You said you would tell me who you are," Elise said. "I have come with my father's letters. I expect answers." "You shall have them," he replied. He gestured to a chair. She sat, keeping her back straight, her satchel in her lap. He did not sit immediately. He took a moment as if laying aside something unseen. Then he moved to the chair opposite her. "My name is Alexandre de Valmont," he said. "Prince Alexandre." The words landed between them like a dropped plate. She stared at him. "That is a poor jest," she said at last. "You do not look like—" She stopped. She had seen the prince's profile on coins, in sketches, above official notices, the line of his jaw, the slope of his nose. Suddenly the familiarity in his face made sense. She pushed back her chair and stood abruptly. "You lied to me," she whispered. "I hid my title," he said. "I did not lie about my name. I told you who I was last of all. That was wrong. I know. You let me speak of nobles, of palace officers, of the prince himself," she said, voice rising. "You let me say he knew nothing, that he did not care. You let me think you were only a man of accounts. You must have been laughing inside." "I was not laughing," he answered. "I was listening. It is the only way I can hear truth without the sound changed by my rank." "And when Lady Vivian saw you in the square," she demanded, "she looked at you as if she knew you. Did you enjoy that? Hiding one step from your own future wife while she warned me not to dig too deep?" "Enjoy," he repeated. "No, I have never enjoyed seeing you in her crosshairs. Not once." "You are still to marry her," Elise said. "Are you not? You said so yourself. The engagement is arranged. Your mother approves. What is all this then, a game? You studying the little waitress who annoyed your fiancé like some unusual insect?" He flinched as if she had struck him. "No," he said quietly. "It began as shock, then curiosity. Yes, I admit that. A girl defying Vivian is news in every salon. But the more I heard, the less I could bear to stand apart. I saw you, and I saw the man you defended, and I saw the way Vivian used her power, and I thought, if I accept this without question, I am not fit to rule anything." She folded her arms tightly, fingers digging into her sleeves. "You speak of duty," she said. "But you walked back to your palace that night. I walked home to a room I might lose. Your world and mine do not touch. They never will. They are touching now," he replied. "And that is what frightens everyone who fears change." She paced once, the small room narrowing each step. Why tell me this? She asked. Why show me this side now? You could have stayed in your corner and watched my life fall apart. It would have been cleaner. Because yesterday, he said, when Vivian spoke of her debt of blood, I realized exactly what she meant. I heard men speaking of it before. I spoke with Henri. I heard them say your father's name, or one like it, in the same breath as those hidden papers. I saw how she holds entire fates in her hands and calls it a game, and I cannot let that stand, not if I am to be the man I wish to be. Her anger cooled a little at his tone, but suspicion remained. What do you know of my father? She asked sharply. He gestured to her satchel. May I? He asked. The letters. Her fingers tightened on the cloth, then slowly loosened. She placed the bundle on the table between them. He opened it with care. The first page bore her father's careful script, addressed to a superior in the offices of public accounts. Alexandra read the opening lines, then the signature. His brow furrowed. I know this name, he said. Not your father's. The man he writes to. He is cousin to one of Vivian's uncles. He was involved in several convenient transfers. He turned another page, eyes moving quickly. Here, he murmured. Your father points out the discrepancy, the missing funds. He names 3 others who signed off on the accounts before him. He asks for an investigation. And what happened? She asked. Nothing. He was dismissed. They said he was the one who mismanaged everything. Alexandra's jaw tightened. These initials, he said, tapping the bottom margin. They belong to one of Vivian's relatives. He acknowledged receiving this letter. Then he buried it. Later, when questions rose, they pulled your father's name from a drawer and held it up as the culprit. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. I heard the undersecretary say yesterday that Vivian keeps the original papers, he said. Contracts, ledgers, letters. She calls them her leverage. She has, in effect, locked your father's honor in a box and uses it to frighten people who once hid behind his disgrace. Elise sank back into her chair. So he was innocent, she said. You are sure? Yes, Alexandra answered. Your father did exactly what a good clerk should. He reported the irregularity. He asked for it to be corrected. That made him dangerous. They needed the money for their own purposes. They chose the simplest solution. Blame the honest man. Her eyes stung. I told him it would be all right, she whispered. That someone would see the mistake. That the truth would clear his name. He died before it did. I'm sorry, Alexandra said. More than I can say. And I am sorry that my family's circle allowed such people to thrive around the court. She looked up at him, searching his face. You cannot undo the years, she said. You cannot bring him back. What good does your sorrow do? Alone, very little, he admitted. But I can do more than feel sorry. I can expose what was done. I can clear his name in the records. I can speak in public of the part people like Vivian's relatives played. It will not mend what you lost, but it will remove the stain they put on him. And it will show others that this pattern will not continue quietly. She laughed once, a small bitter sound. And you think they will let you? She asked. Your advisors? Your mother? Vivian's family? They will tell you to keep the peace, to let old sins lie. They may, he said. Some already have. But I am not a child to be led by the hand. I am the man who will stand before the people and speak of our future. If that future is built on lies, it will crumble. I will not stand on such ground. He leaned forward slightly. Elise, he said, softer, I cannot promise you a simple path. If I break with Vivian, there will be noise. Her family will fight back with words and accusations. They may try to drag your name further into it. That is why I did not speak to you of this sooner. I needed to be sure you understood what you were stepping into. And what am I stepping into? She asked. More humiliation, more doors closing, more ladies in carriages pointing at me and laughing. Perhaps, he said honestly, but also the chance to stand where they cannot ignore you, to speak as the daughter of a wronged man, before people who have never had to hear such voices. I cannot force you to want that. I can only ask if you are willing. She looked at the letters on the table, at her father's steady hand. He would have been terrified, she said. He hated attention. And he wrote these letters anyway, Alexandra replied, knowing they might anger those above him. She smiled sadly. He believed in rules, she said. He thought if he followed them, they would protect him. Then let us make them protect him now, Alexandra said. Properly. At last. Silence settled, not heavy, but full. You said you would end your engagement, she said quietly. Is that truly possible? An arrangement like that is not a ribbon one unties when it pinches. No, he agreed. It is more like a knot in a rope, but knots can be undone or cut if one is prepared to bear the strain. How? She asked. He straightened. There is to be a gathering, he said. Soon. Many will be there. Nobles, officials, representatives of the city. They expect me to speak publicly of my future with Vivian, to reassure everyone. Instead, I plan to speak of trust, of justice, and of the need to answer for past decisions. I will present what we know of these accounts. I will show that clerks like your father were used as shields. I will say that I cannot bind myself to someone who treats lives as pieces on a board. You will humiliate her, Elise said slowly. I will tell the truth, he corrected. The humiliation is the result of her choices, not mine. I will not be cruel. I will not shout. I will simply refuse to wear a mask I cannot breathe behind. And you want me there, she said. Yes, he replied. If you are willing. It must not be only my voice. This concerns you. It concerns others like you. If you are willing to stand and say this is what happened to my family, it will carry a weight my words alone cannot. She felt suddenly small and very large at once. You ask a great deal, she said. I know, he answered. She studied him. The prince. The man who had walked with her through the market and carried himself as if his coat meant nothing. They did not seem like two separate people, and that confused her more than anything. What do you gain from this, she asked. If you break with Vivian and anger her family and stir old scandals, what is your reward? He smiled, but there was no lightness in it. Peace of mind, he said, the knowledge that when I look in the mirror, I see a man I can respect. And perhaps, he paused, perhaps the chance to be with someone who reminds me what that respect is worth, he finished quietly. Her breath caught. You speak in riddles again, she said, though her voice softened. I speak as clearly as I dare, he replied. You have occupied my thoughts from the moment you stood between a powerful woman and a powerless man. I have tried to pretend it was only admiration for your courage. It is more than that. But I will not press those feelings on you as a debt. You owe me nothing. Not for the bakery, not for this plan, not for my confession. If you choose to walk away after your father's name is cleared, I will accept it. She looked down at her hands. They were roughened by work, dusted still with a faint trace of flour. Not the hands of a princess, but his gaze did not seem to see them as unworthy. When I was a child, she said slowly, I used to imagine princes as men in ridiculous clothes, riding past in carriages, throwing coins like crumbs to pigeons. I did not imagine them sitting in small rooms, asking tired girls to help them clean old stains from the walls. Perhaps it is time to imagine them differently, he said. She lifted her head. I am afraid, she admitted. Afraid of being used again. Afraid that I will stand there and speak, and nothing will change, and I will have given them another story to mock. That fear is reasonable, he said. But know this, I will stand beside you. I will not let them twist your words without answering. If they mock, they will have to mock me as well. I am not asking you to fight alone. His hand moved slightly on the table, stopping short of hers, as if he did not dare presume. She looked at that small distance. Then, slowly, she closed it, laying her hand gently over his fingers. His breath hitched. Very well, Your Highness, she said quietly. I will stand with you for my father, for the man in the restaurant, for the child pushed to the corner, for myself, not because you are a prince, but because you are at least trying to be a good man. He turned his hand, not gripping, only letting his fingers curl lightly around hers, as if the moment might break if he held too tightly. Thank you, he whispered. She squeezed once, then withdrew, suddenly aware of her racing heart. One condition, she said. Name it, he replied. You will not speak of me as if I were some miracle that appeared to fix your conscience, she said. I am a woman, not a symbol. If you want to change how things are done, do it for all of us. Not only because I walked into your line of sight. His eyes warmed. Agreed, he said. You are not my excuse. You are my reminder. That sounds dangerously poetic, she replied. Be careful. If you talk like that in public, they will think you have lost your mind. They already think that, he said lightly. I might as well deserve it. A laugh escaped her, small but real. He closed the letters carefully, wrapping them in the cloth again. I will have copies made, he said. Quietly. The originals will remain with you. No one will take them from you again. I trust Monsieur Delcourt more than most, he added. He will handle them with care. She nodded. When will this gathering happen? She asked. In a few days, he said. I will send word through Henri. He will come to the bakery as a customer. If you see him, follow whatever instructions he gives. He is discreet. And Vivienne? She asked. She will not suspect? She suspects something, he admitted. She suspects everything, but she does not yet know how closely her games have touched my patience. She believes I will always choose calm over conflict. She forgets that sometimes the calmest waters hide the strongest currents. You are very fond of images, she said. I am learning from bakers, he answered. They speak in dough and heat. She rose. I should go, she said. Madame Girard will start counting the steps on the stairs if I am too late. And I must sleep if I am to face a room full of people who think my voice is a novelty. He stood as well. May I escort you to the corner? He asked. She considered, then smiled faintly. I suppose if anyone stops us, she said, I can say I am giving directions to a lost clerk. Not a prince? He asked. Princes do not get lost, she replied. Or so the stories say. Then let us prove the stories wrong, he said. They walked together to the end of the street. The evening air was crisp. A lamplighter moved along the row, lifting his pole to coax small flames into life. At the corner she paused. Alexandra, she said. Yes, he replied. If this goes badly, she said, if they shout or scoff or turn their backs, do not regret speaking. Regret is heavier than fear. He looked at her, something bright and fierce in his gaze. Coming from anyone else, he said. Those words might sound like a lesson. From you, they sound like a promise. Perhaps they are both, she answered. He bowed, not with palace ceremony, but with simple respect. Until we meet again, Elise, he said. She turned toward her own street, satchel close to her side, heart beating fast. The city no longer felt entirely indifferent. Somewhere beyond its roofs, in rooms she had never seen, plans now moved that had her father's name at their center. For the first time since his dismissal, she felt that the weight of his unjust fate did not rest solely on her narrow shoulders, but was being lifted, little by little, by hands that had once been part of the same world that cast him aside. On the morning of the gathering, Paris woke restless. Rumors had been moving faster than carts for 2 days. Some said the prince would at last announce his marriage. Others whispered that he would do something scandalous. No one agreed on what, only that faces of importance would be gathered in the same room, and that meant talk. In her small attic, Elise stood before the cracked bit of mirror, smoothing the skirt of a dress that was not hers. It fits well enough, Madame Girard said from the doorway, arms folded, eyes softer than her tone. My niece wore it when she thought she might marry a clerk. It seems it was waiting for you instead. It is too fine, Elise murmured. I will look like a child playing at dressing up. Good, the landlady replied. Let them see a child they cannot easily dismiss. She stepped forward, adjusting the neckline with quick fingers. Remember to eat, she added. No one listens to a girl who faints halfway through a sentence. Take this. She pressed a small roll into Elise's hand. From the bakery, Elise guessed. Where else? Madame Girard said. That woman told me to tell you that if you forget your words, think about flour. It settles if you let it. So will your thoughts. That does not sound like her, Elise said, surprised. She shouted it at me, the landlady replied, which means she meant it warmly. A knock sounded downstairs. That will be him, Madame Girard said. Go, before I decide this is madness and lock you in. Henri waited at the door with his usual unobtrusive calm. He wore a good coat, but not one that drew stares. Are you ready, mademoiselle? He asked. No, she said, but I am coming anyway. That is usually the only way courage arrives, he replied. The carriage they used was plain, its curtains simple. As they moved through the streets, Elise watched the city shift from narrow lanes to wider avenues, from laundry-hung windows to tidy facades. "Will they hate me?" she asked suddenly. "The nobles, the officials, will they say I am ungrateful for standing there at all?" "Some will," Henri said honestly. "Others will quietly be grateful that someone else spoke first. Many will not know what to feel and will wait to see which way the wind blows." "And the prince?" she pressed. "How does he feel?" Henri smiled slightly. "I am not fool enough to speak for him," he said. "But I have eyes. He looks at you as if you are the first true sentence he has read in years." Her cheeks warmed. "That is a strange way to look at someone," she said. "It suits him," Henri replied. The carriage drew up at a side entrance to a large building near the palace. Not the main hall, but a smaller assembly room used for more serious gatherings, or so Henri explained. It allowed for fewer chandeliers and more listening. Inside, servants moved quietly, arranging chairs, lighting candles. A murmur of voices spilled from the main chamber where guests already took their seats. Alexandre waited in a small antechamber, speaking with the Queen and Monsieur Delcourt. He turned when Elise entered, and whatever thoughts crowded his mind seemed to clear at once. "You came," he said, relief softening his features. "I said I would," she replied. "I do not break my promises. It seems impolite when I ask others to keep theirs." The Queen approached, her expression calm, assessing, not unkind. "So this is the young woman who made my son think more deeply than a dozen advisers," she said. "Mademoiselle Moreau, is it?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Elise said, bowing her head. "I did not intend to cause so much trouble." "The times intended it," the Queen answered. "You were simply the one honest enough to push the first stone." She looked into Elise's eyes, as if searching for something there. "You are afraid," she noted. "Yes," Elise admitted. "Good," the Queen said. "Only fools are unafraid of speaking truth in a room full of pride. But be not ashamed of your fear. Turn it into steadiness. Think of your father. Speak to him as much as to them." "I will try," Elise said. Delcourt handed Alexandre a neat folder of papers. "The copies are ready," he said. "The originals remain safe." "And the officials?" Alexandre asked. "Are they present?" "They are all there," Delcourt replied. "Some look smug. Some look uneasy. I cannot tell which I enjoy more." Henri stepped closer. "It is time, sir," he said. "They await you." Alexandre nodded, then turned to Elise. "You do not have to go in yet," he said. "Listen from here if you wish. If you decide, when you hear their reactions, that you do not want to speak, I will not think less of you. I can carry your father's story alone." She stared at him. "And let them think it is only your noble conscience troubled by theory," she said. "No, they should see at least one face their decisions have marked." "Are you certain?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I am coming anyway." He smiled faintly. "We seem to share that habit," he replied. Together they walked toward the main chamber. At the doorway he paused. "When I step through this," he murmured, "I am the prince again. I will not be able to look at you as freely as I do now, but know that you are with me in every word." She nodded. "I will see you clearly enough for both of us," she said. He squared his shoulders and entered. The room was not vast, but it felt full. Rows of chairs faced a raised platform. Nobles in rich fabrics, city officials in stiff coats, a few carefully chosen representatives of guilds and merchants. At one side sat Vivienne, perfectly composed, her gown understated but flawless, her expression an elegant mask of anticipation. People rose as Alexandre entered. He acknowledged them with a calm nod and took his place. "Friends," he began, his voice carrying without strain. "Thank you for coming." The murmurs died. "You expect perhaps that I will speak of celebration," he went on, "of alliances, of future festivities, and indeed I had thought not long ago that this would be an occasion for only joy. But joy built on uncertain ground cannot last. I find I must first speak of trust." He let the word hang. "Trust," he repeated, "is the invisible thread that holds this city together. When a man pays his taxes, he trusts that those coins will support the common good. When a clerk signs a document, he trusts that his honesty will be recognized. When a prince speaks, he trusts that his word will be believed. Without that trust, titles and robes and ceremonies are hollow." A man in the front row shifted. Another cleared his throat uneasily. "Some years ago," Alexandre continued, Irregularities were found in the accounts of certain public funds. Money was missing. Fingers pointed. Blame fell, as it so often does, on those with the least power. A clerk was dismissed. Others like him carried stains on their names for the rest of their lives, and the matter was considered closed. Vivienne's gaze sharpened. "It has recently come to my attention," Alexandra said, "that this matter was not closed at all. It was buried. The true decisions, the true beneficiaries were concealed behind the dismissal of men who had, in fact, tried to do their duty." A low stir ran through the room. "I hold in my hands," Alexandre said, lifting the folder, "copies of letters written at that time, letters from clerks who saw the discrepancies, who reported them, who trusted that someone above them would correct the wrong. These letters were received. They were acknowledged. They were then hidden. The funds continued to be misused. The honest were punished. The well-connected were shielded." He opened the folder and took out the first page. "This letter," he said, "was written by Etienne Moreau." At the sound of the name, Elise's heart clenched. "A clerk of 20 years' faithful service," Alexandra went on. "He detailed with clarity the irregular movement of sums from one ledger to another. He named those who had signed off before him. He asked with respect for an investigation." He paused. "He was dismissed," Alexandra said, "labeled incompetent. His name whispered with disapproval. He died with that stain on him." A few faces in the room lost color. An older man near the side gripped his cane tightly, guilt etched across his features. "These letters," Alexandra continued, lifting others, "show a pattern, not only for Etienne Moreau, but for other clerks whose names appear here. They warned, they were ignored. Why? Because their warnings threatened the comfort of those higher in the chain, because the missing funds lined pockets that carried titles." He let the pages fall back into the folder. "These documents have been kept quietly in private hands," he said, "used as leverage, as a way to influence decisions, to secure favors. Those who possessed them did not bring them forth to correct a wrong, but to hold a sword made of ink over the heads of their companions." A ripple of unease swept the room. Vivienne's fan remained closed in her lap. Her knuckles had whitened around it. "I will not name every individual involved today," Alexandra said. "Some are no longer alive. Some have already stepped back from public roles. But I will name the wrong. It is wrong to ruin the lives of honest servants for the convenience of the powerful. It is wrong to treat justice as a coin one can spend only when it yields advantage. It is wrong to carry in secret the proof of such injustice and use it not to right the past, but to manipulate the present." He took a breath. "As your future king," he went on, voice steady, "I cannot allow this pattern to continue. I have ordered that these documents be reviewed by impartial eyes, that the names of the clerks be cleared in the official records. I have instructed that the families be informed and, where possible, compensated. Their honor will be restored where it should always have been." A murmur of approval rose from some corners. Others remained tense. "And I must add this," Alexandra said. "Those who kept these papers as tools of influence include individuals very close to my own circle. Members of noble families tied to the House of Darcy. Some of these actions were taken before Lady Vivienne's time. Some, however, she has accepted, continued, and used to maintain her own position." All eyes flew to Vivienne. She did not flinch, but the line of her jaw hardened. "I invited her here today," Alexandra said, turning to face her openly, "because I will not accuse in absence. Lady Vivienne, you have held and still hold documents that could have cleared these clerks years ago. You chose not to use them for that purpose. You called them in private your debt of blood. Do you deny this?" Her eyes burned. "I do not deny that I have protected you," she said, rising gracefully, "or that I have kept certain papers safe. But to twist that into villainy," she turned slowly, letting the room see her wounded dignity. "I did what I thought necessary to shield the crown from scandal. Why drag out old errors now when the city already trembles? Is this truly about justice, Your Highness, or is it about showing that you can defy those who have supported you?" Her words were smooth, but there was a faint edge of panic. "It is about trust," he replied. "The people know there have been errors. They talk, they whisper, they see dismissed clerks and hungry families. The scandal is not in admitting the truth. It is in hiding it." She lifted her chin. "And what of the benefits I have brought?" she said. The alliances, the favors, the influence. You speak as if I stand alone in this. Many in this room have enjoyed the fruits of such arrangements. Yet you single me out. Why? Because a servant girl has captured your imagination. She said, servant girl with carefully measured disdain, enough to sting but not enough to sound openly cruel. Several heads turned toward the side door where Elise stood. And yes, Vivian continued, eyes narrowing, let us speak of her. This little waitress who dared to address me as if we were equals. Do you think she understands the weight of what you do, Your Highness? That by indulging her, you weaken the principle of rank that holds this structure upright? Alexandra's gaze did not waver. She understands the weight of injustice more clearly than many in this room, he said, because she has borne it personally. Because it was her father whose name you let rot in a drawer. Vivian laughed softly, though her eyes flashed. Ah, she said, so that is it. A neat story. The wronged daughter, the noble prince, the wicked lady. It will make an excellent ballad. How flattering to be cast as the villain, if the shoe fits, someone murmured in the audience, quickly stifling it. You keep speaking of her, Vivian went on. Then bring her out. Let us see this paragon of virtue. Let us hear from her lips whether she truly seeks justice or whether she simply enjoys her sudden company. The challenge hung in the air. Alexandra turned his head toward the side door. Elise, he said. Her heart thudded. Her legs felt strangely distant, but she moved. Whispers spread like ripples on water as she walked down the aisle to the front. Some faces watched with open curiosity, others with cold judgment, a few with quiet sympathy. She stopped beside Alexandra, close enough to feel his steadiness beside her. State your name, he said gently. Elise Moreau, she replied, her voice clear despite the pounding in her chest. Daughter of Etienne Moreau. Tell them, he said, what happened to your family? She swallowed, then spoke. My father loved his work, she began. He believed that numbers were honest, if people let them be. When he saw that sums did not match, he wrote to his superiors. He thought they would be glad. He believed the rules existed to correct such mistakes. She glanced at the letters in Alexandra's hand. He wrote, and they wrote back, she continued. They told him they had received his concern. Then, months later, they told him he was at fault, that he was dismissed, that his name would be tied to the missing funds. She met the crowd's gaze, one face at a time. We struggled, she said. We sold what we could. We watched doors close. My father grew quieter. He died with the weight of that shame pressing on him. He never saw any of these papers. He did not know that his warnings had been kept. He thought he had failed. Her voice wavered for a moment. She steadied it. I came here today, she said. Not because I enjoy being stared at by people who do not know my name, but because I could not ignore the chance to say out loud that he tried to do right, that his dismissal was not a reflection of his character, but of others' fear. She turned her head toward Vivian. I do not know you, she said. Not truly. I know only what I saw in that restaurant, and what I have heard since. You say you kept these papers to protect the crown. I ask you, if protection was your goal, why did you not protect men like my father from unjust blame? Why did you keep quiet when their names could have been cleared? Vivian's lips pressed into a thin line. You are bold, mademoiselle, she said, but you see only your father. I see an entire structure that might crumble if we tug at too many stones. Then perhaps some stones should crumble, Elise replied softly, so that better ones can be placed. A murmur ran through the room, not quite applause, not quite disapproval, something like thought. The Queen rose from her seat. Lady Vivian, she said, her tone cool but controlled. When we arranged this engagement, we believed we were binding our son to a family that understood the difference between influence and integrity. It seems we must reconsider. Vivian's head whipped toward her. Your Majesty, she said, surely you do not intend to cast aside all that my family has provided on the word of a clerk's daughter and a handful of old letters. It is more than a handful, the Queen said. It is a pattern, and patterns matter. They show who we have been, and from that who we may yet be. She looked at Alexandra. Have you made your decision? She asked. He nodded. Yes, he said, I have. He turned again to the assembled guests. I cannot and will not marry a woman who treats justice as a tool for personal advantage, he said, who keeps proof of others' suffering as a way to compel obedience, who believes that rank gives her the right to decide whose dignity matters. He faced Vivienne directly. I release you from our engagement, he said, not in anger but in clarity. We are not suited. Our visions of duty differ too greatly. We would make each other miserable, and through that misery, we would wound those who look to us for guidance. A hush fell so deep that even the distant sounds from the street seemed to fade. Vivienne stood very still. I see, she said at last, her voice icy. So this is how it ends. Not in private with courtesy, but in a public display to earn yourself the praise of those who enjoy righteous speeches. Her gaze sliced toward Elise. And to impress your new audience, she added. Elise held her eyes. I do not want your place, she said quietly. I want my father's name cleared. Whatever happens beyond that is between you and your conscience. Vivienne laughed once. Brittle. Conscience, she said. Such a fashionable word today. She looked back at the room, at the faces that had once courted her favor. Do not imagine, she said softly, that this removes all stain from you. Many of you have benefited from the same silence you now pretend to despise. Remember that when you go home and congratulate yourselves on your virtue. With that she inclined her head, perfectly composed, despite the crack beneath her calm. Your Highness, she said to Alexandra, I wish you luck. You will need it. She turned and walked up the aisle. No one barred her path. A few avoided her eyes. Others watched with a mixture of awe and relief. The door closed softly behind her. Silence lingered. Then a man near the front, older, modestly dressed compared to the nobles, stood. My brother was one of those clerks, he said. He died with the same stain as Monsieur Moreau. I thank you, Your Highness, for bringing this forth. I thank you, mademoiselle, for standing here. His voice broke. He sat down quickly. Another person rose to ask about the review of the documents. Questions piled up. Alexandra answered as many as he could, calmly, without triumph. He spoke of commissions, of transparency, of new procedures. The Queen added her weight. Officials agreed, some eagerly, some grudgingly. Through it all, Elise stood a little behind him, feeling both exposed and strangely steady. The worst had happened. She had spoken, and the world had not ended. Instead, some faces had softened. At last, the formal portion concluded. People began to file out, chattering in low, intense tones. Henri guided Delcourt to another room to begin preparing copies for distribution. The Queen murmured something to Alexandra and left via a side door, giving Elise a small nod as she passed. Soon only a handful remained in the chamber. Alexandra turned to her. It is done, he said softly. For them, perhaps, she replied. For me, it feels unfinished. In what way? He asked. She looked at him, really looked, as if seeing him not as prince or stranger or ally, but as a man standing in front of her with his future in pieces that he had chosen to break. You have torn one life loose, she said. What will you build instead? He held her gaze. I cannot answer that fully, he admitted. Not yet. But I know what I want at the center of it. He moved closer, not too close, leaving space for her to step back if she wished. When I first saw you, he said, you were standing between Vivienne and a man whose name you did not know. You had everything to lose and nothing to gain. You did it anyway. Since then, every time I have spoken with you, you have reminded me of the person I want to be. Someone who does not turn away when the cost of doing right is high. He took a breath. I have broken my engagement, he went on. Not only because of politics or accounts or public opinion, but because I cannot share my life with someone who does not value that. But I do not wish to walk alone either. I wish, he stopped, searching her eyes. I wish to walk with you, he said simply, not as a benefactor and a grateful subject, but as equals in the one place where it matters most. Our home. I am asking, Elise, if you would consider binding your life to mine, if you would consider marrying me. The words fell gently, but their weight was immense. Her breath caught. Marry you, she repeated faintly, as in, be a princess, live in rooms with ceilings higher than my entire house, sit at tables with people who have never touched dough or scrubbed floors. Yes, he said, and also walk in gardens at dawn, visit bakeries without heralds, listen to petitions not only from nobles, but from men like your father. I do not pretend it will be easy. They will gossip. Some will sneer. There will be lessons, tutors, endless adjustments. But I would rather face all of that with you than face an easy life with someone I cannot trust." She laughed softly, half bewildered, half moved. "You are mad," she said. "You know that?" "Entirely," he agreed. "But I am a prince. They expect some madness. I would like mine to be in the direction of generosity rather than excess." Her eyes filled. "What if I make mistakes?" she whispered. "What if I say the wrong thing? What if your world crushes me?" "Then we will laugh, correct, and try again," he said. "And if my world tries to crush you, it will have to crush me first." She shook her head, torn between fear and a fierce, unexpected joy. "I have nothing," she said. "No dowry, no connections, only my father's name and my stubbornness. Those are precisely the things I value," he replied. He took her hand, carefully, as if asking permission. "I do not beg you to say yes because it would make me noble," he said. "I beg you to say yes because I am in love with you, with your courage, your quick tongue, your quiet strength. When I imagine my life ahead, every image that feels honest includes you." She stared at their joined hands. "When my father wrote those letters," she murmured, "he thought no one important would ever read them with care. Today, a prince read them aloud. Today, his name was untangled from lies. That alone feels like a dream. To add, this seems almost too much to ask of the world." "Then ask it of me," he said. She looked up. "Alexandra," she said softly. "I am afraid." "I am too," he answered. She smiled through her tears. "Good," she said. "Then we begin honestly." Her fingers tightened around his. "Yes," she whispered. "I will marry you." For a heartbeat, he did not move, as if afraid any motion would break the moment. Then his face lit with a joy so unguarded, it made him look almost boyish. "Thank you," he breathed. He drew her closer, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not. The distance between them vanished. He lifted her hand to his lips first, a gesture of reverence, then bent and kissed her, softly, gently, a promise rather than a claim. She closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of it, the steady presence behind it, the sense that the world had narrowed to the space between their hearts. When they parted, she laughed, breathless. "If you think the city gossips loudly now," she said, "wait until they hear of this." "Let them," he replied. "I would rather their chatter be about love than about fear." Days turned into weeks. The news spread, of course. It ran through salons and markets, through kitchens and counting rooms. Some voices disapproved, muttering about standards and precedent. Others were delighted, spinning the story into a symbol of change. The dismissed clerks' families received letters, formal and apologetic, acknowledging past wrongs and restoring honor. Etienne Moreau's name was cleared in the records. In a drawer in the palace, the copy of his letter remained, a quiet witness that someone had listened at last. Vivian did not vanish. She retreated to her family's estate for a time, her influence dimmed but not entirely gone. Some said she would return in another role, older, sharper, perhaps wiser. Others avoided speaking of her at all. For Elise, she became a figure in the distance, a reminder of what happens when power forgets compassion. Not a monster, but a warning. The wedding, when it came, was more modest than the city had expected. There were no endless fireworks, no extravagant parades. There was music, simple and beautiful. There were flowers from common gardens as well as palace plots. There were invited nobles, of course, but also a scattering of people who rarely entered such halls. Bakers, clerks, the owner of a certain restaurant on Rue Saint-Honoré, who stood near the back and wiped his eyes more than once. Madame Girard sniffed and refused to cry, failing entirely on both counts. The baker's wife claimed she had no patience for gowns and tears, then spent an hour adjusting Elise's veil and muttering about how princes should eat more bread and fewer lies. As Elise walked down the aisle on the arm of Henri, who when pressed shyly admitted he had known her father once in passing, she did not feel like an imposter. She felt like exactly who she was, a woman who had carried plates, counted coins, buried her father, stood up to a noblewoman and fallen in love with a man who happened to wear a crown. Alexandra waited for her at the front, eyes bright, shoulders square. When she reached him, He took her hands as if they were the only anchors he would ever need. "Are you ready?" he whispered. "No," she whispered back, "but I am coming anyway." He smiled, and the vows began. They spoke simple words: to listen, to respect, to tell each other the truth even when it was hard, to use whatever power they held not to shield themselves from discomfort, but to ease the burdens of those who had none. When the ceremony ended and they stepped out together, the crowd outside burst into cheers. Not all were joyous, but most were. Some people simply watched, thoughtful, as if seeing their rulers as human beings for the first time in a long while. Later, when the formalities were over and the music softened, Alexandra tugged Elise's hand. "Come," he said, "before someone traps us in another conversation about grain prices." "We should talk about grain prices," she said. "It feeds the people." "We will," he answered. "Tomorrow, tonight, I want to walk." They slipped away, not far, just into a quieter courtyard, where the noise became a distant hum. The night was cool. Stars pricked the dark sky above the palace roofs. "Do you remember?" he asked. "The first time we walked through the market together?" "Yes," she said. "I thought you were a strange clerk with too many opinions." "And I thought you were the bravest person I had ever seen," he replied. She leaned her head lightly against his shoulder. "Do you worry," she asked, "that we will forget what brought us here? That we will grow comfortable and stop listening?" "Every day," he said. "That is why I need you, to remind me, to ask me, when I am tempted to ignore something difficult. Would you have walked past that man in the restaurant?" "And you," she said, "what will you remind me of?" "That you do not carry the world alone," he answered. "That it is allowed to rest, to be happy, to dance badly at banquets and eat too much cake." She laughed. "I look forward to seeing you dance badly," she said. "It is a sight reserved for very few," he replied gravely. "Consider it one of the privileges of your position." She reached up and touched his cheek. "I am proud of you," she said. "Not because you are a prince, but because you chose to act when it would have been easier to stay silent. And I am proud of you," he said, "because you chose to speak when it would have been safer to stay silent." He cupped her face gently in his hands. "We are very poor at choosing safety," he murmured. "We are very rich in everything else," she answered. He kissed her again, there in the quiet, with no crowd watching, no ceremony, just the two of them and the soft sound of leaves in the courtyard. It was a deeper kiss this time, still gentle, still respectful, but full of the promise of a shared life, of mornings and arguments and laughter and plans, of listening to petitions and visiting bakeries, and someday, perhaps, telling their children the story of how a waitress once told a future princess she could leave a restaurant if she wished. When they finally broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. "Do you think," she asked softly, "that one act of courage can truly change anything?" He smiled. "It changed everything for me," he said. "For my heart, for my conscience, for my future, and for your father's name. That is already enough. The rest, we will discover together." She took his hand. "Then let us keep choosing courage," she said, "even on days when it feels small." "Especially on those days," he replied. They walked back toward the light and music, their fingers intertwined. Two very different lives woven into one path. Around them, Paris murmured and shifted, history moving at its own slow pace. But in that moment, in that courtyard, it felt as if the world had paused just long enough to let a brave girl from a narrow street and a prince with ink-stained conscience begin their life not as a legend, but as two people who had dared to love with their eyes open. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you like the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories, full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.